How much did you drink last night?
A lot.
Oh, I know.
So much. I was so embarrassed. I had a dream that you were like, so I really have fun doing this with you, but you just drink too much. Like, I legit had a dream about that. And I woke up like, did that conversation happen?
Welcome to episode 4 of Booze Podcast.
It's episode 4. I never know how to start these, but that's okay, because if you have been listening, you know what the podcast is about. Sam, what is it about for those who are just now joining?
It is about everything macabre,
spooky,
creepy,
anything that's just uncomfortable and weird. And this episode is going to be one of the more uncomfortable episodes.
Okay, so this episode we're actually twisting everything up this episode. I'm going to be telling the story, and Ollie's going to be giving us kind of some breaks, as we'll call it.
Yeah, I have some fun facts about seahorses and Seth Rogen. Just to give us a little mental break, because some of the content in this episode is very heavy. And I feel like if you're listening to this podcast and listen to podcasts similar to this, you're probably already comfortable with this information, but if you're not, then that's okay. We'll catch you next week.
Yeah. So if you guys want to skip this episode, that's completely okay. But this case involves a lot of children crimes and children sexual assault and pedophile rings and all that. It's hard. It's heavy. And when we started this podcast, we wanted to talk about the subjects that most people don't talk about. It's really hard to find podcasts about these cases because they are so dark and so awful.
Yes, but we were talking prior to recording, and these things are important to talk about because it does happen. And we need to be aware that, not everyone's good. And these awful things do happen to people and to the most vulnerable people in the world.
Yeah, we can't just pretend it doesn't happen, because it does happen every day, unfortunately. And I was kind of drawn to this case because I actually dealt with childhood sexual assault myself, and when I was going through documentaries on, I believe it was Amazon, I was like, okay, it's a disappearance case, and I got sucked in, and I realized that we had to do this because it was completely important to do. So if you want to sit tight and listen, that's great. If you want to click off, we completely understand.
Yeah, but before we get started, since we are Booze Podcast,
yes.
Sam, is there anything you are drinking today?
Actually, just water.
That's
because
good.
We drank too much last night.
Yes, so yesterday, Sam took the trip to Austin to come hang out with me and my crew, and thankfully she still wants to be my friend. I drank way too much, so I'm drinking a green juice with apple and celery and nutrients and drink aid.
You need to get all those toxins out of your body.
Yeah, so if you do go out and have a long night of binge drinking, which it happens to the best of us sometimes, we're not sponsored by Drink Aid, but that stuff works miracles. And if you are somebody who works for Drink Aid and would like to sponsor us, that would be like my life goal right there.
Right.
That stuff really works.
You would be set.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to pay me, Drink Aid. Just send me bottles.
Give me some free stuff.
Send me bottles, please. Anyways.
Yeah, no. We had a great trip to Austin, though, yesterday. I had a lot of fun. So
good, I'm glad. And we purchased a lot of cool, creepy stuff.
Yes, we did. We'll have to post it on our Instagram for sure, which is not boob. It is Booze Podcast, BOOZ. We'll post what we bought because we bought a lot of cute stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Cute as in little bats dressed up as Vlad the Impaler. And what does that guy look like? He's just dressed up as a gentleman.
He's supposed to be Beelzebub. one of the 7 Princes of Hell or something like that. So
okay, cool.
I don't know. He looked like Chewie when Chewie needs a bath, so I bought him.
He's very adorable. So we'll definitely post a picture and tag the shop that we purchased it at because it's just really cool. It had a bunch of cool stuff. Yeah. All the Ouija boards you can dream of. That we're not allowed to buy.
Yeah. He's like, you're not bringing that in the house, Party Peter.
I mean, y'all did play with one yesterday at the winery.
We did, very briefly, but that was as far away as possible.
I was too. I was like, I'm not going to touch that thing. I was looking away the whole time.
Nothing happened, though, so I mean. Yeah. But no, if you guys are ever in Austin and you want to check out the Glass Coffin, it's a Glass Coffin Vampire Parlor, and they have a shop right next door to that, too. You go upstairs, and they sell a bunch of stuff, too. It was great. I had a lot of fun. Yeah,
and they're really knowledgeable. The people who work there know a lot about all the stuff that they sell there. Little specimens in jars, too. I thought that was cool.
And Joey, the owner, I believe his name is Joey, he was so friendly and, like, so personable and just, he answered everything so, like, knowledgeable and just didn't judge us at all, so it was
our lack of knowledge. Yeah. Yeah, we walked away with a lot of cool stuff, cool art too. So
I'm going to have to make another trip ASAP and get some more stuff, so for sure.
It's open all the time too, so it's not like we went Halloween shopping. It was just our normal everyday purchase.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
It's so funny when we were leaving, Joey was like, he was looking at Matt and me. He's like, you guys don't look like my typical customers. And Matt was like, yeah, she hides it really well. And he just started laughing. So... All right, well, I guess we should get started.
Let's jump into it.
Because this is going to suck.
It's going to be interesting. The content is just going to be rough.
Yeah, for sure. So today, I am doing the disappearance of Andy Puglisi. And my resources for that were the Boston Globe articles, the documentary Have You Seen Andy?, the Eagle Tribune, which is a newspaper to that area, and declassified FBI files. And like we had said earlier, this story destroyed me. Like, I cried a whole bunch of ugly tears with the whole documentary and all the research. But it's got to be told. It's a story that has to be told. And like we said, this story revolves completely around children, pedophiles, sex rings, just all the bad stuff. And I'm going to try as much as possible not to go into too much details because they're just not needed for the story. I'll tell you the basis of it, but I'm not getting into the nitty-gritty of it. So, the story begins in 1976 with 10-year-old Angelo Puglisi, known to friends and family as Andy. He went missing at Higgins Memorial Pool on a hot summer day in Lawrence, Massachusetts. Him and his family lived on the poorest side of town, which was referred to as the Stadium Projects. It was cramped, and everyone knew what was going on. It was kind of horseshoe-shaped. So you kind of saw the kids playing in the neighborhood. If you looked out your window, you would see your neighbor. It was just a very close, tight-knit community. And every home had kids, and the kids grew up and played together constantly. Now, Andy was a shy, sweet, helpful boy who always went out of his way to help others. When Andy first moved into the neighborhood, he was playing with a boy who had a sister named Melanie. His older brother didn't want Melanie, who was a year younger than Andy, to play with them. Andy told Melanie's brother that if she couldn't play, he wasn't going to play either. And I mean, that just completely reflects his character and the type of person he was. And from that moment on, Melanie began to have a crush on Andy. There's just super sweet, innocent, just childhood crushes.
Yeah, and the kid's adorable, too.
Yeah. We'll have
adorable
to post
and sweet, yeah.
We'll post a picture of them on our Instagram. We're just going to get right into it. It's just going to get bad from the start, and it's going to get worse and worse.
It doesn't get better.
It does not get better. So, the morning of Andy's disappearance, his mother, Faith, made him soup. And as she sat across from him feeding his baby sister, Andy was slurping his soup loudly. He noticed his mother looking at him, and Andy made a face. Typically, his mother would have scolded him, but she just told him, "No, honey, eat your soup." And she went upstairs to put his baby sister down for a nap, and that was the last time she saw Andy. Melanie and her older brother were some of the kids at the pool that day. Around lunchtime, Melanie was pretty hungry, so she asked Andy if he wanted to walk home with her. He declined, stating that he wanted to stay longer, so her and her brother left to go get lunch, and that's the last time she saw Andy, and he was sitting in the sun enjoying the hot summer day. At around 3:30, when all of Andy's siblings came home, his mother did a head count. When she realized Andy wasn't home yet, she sent his siblings back to the pool to go get Andy. His siblings searched the pool and asked the lifeguard if they had seen Andy, but because it was such a hot summer day, the pool was packed and the lifeguards couldn't remember. Faith thought Andy just didn't want to come home, so at around 5 p.m. she started searching for him. She walked around the neighborhood asking anyone she saw if they had seen Andy. A few kids mentioned that they had seen him wandering by the stadium, so she went to go investigate. But there was no Andy. She told herself that maybe he was at a friend's house and had lost track of time. By 8 p.m., Faith was getting more frantic because Andy was epileptic and she was worried he had had a seizure and gotten hurt. She still didn't call the cops till 10 p.m., thinking he would come home through the door at any moment. And I think she was very hesitant to call because that makes it real, and that means that he's gone. So...
Wait, I'm sorry. How long did it take for her to call or notice?
So around 3:30 p.m., all of Andy's siblings came home, and that's when she realized Andy wasn't there. She didn't call till 10 p.m. that night. So,
is that something that people found as suspicious?
Not really, just because it was summer and they thought the kids were playing and all that, and they thought they were at other people's homes.
It seems like a community where, the doors aren't locked and the kids just kind of run around and...
Definitely. Because they did start searching around 5 o'clock, and, there was people around, 8 o'clock helping her search. It was just that she didn't call the cops till 10.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah, it would be more suspicious if Andy was missing around 3:30, and she didn't do anything till 10.
Gotcha.
So,
I just wasn't sure if the parents or the mom was, a person of interest, but I didn't want to bring that up yet. Yet. Yeah.
Of course, once the cops were called, they told her they couldn't do anything for 24 hours.
Why is that? Why do you have to wait 24 hours for them to be considered missing? Because isn't it the first 48 hours are the most crucial? So it's let me sit on this for a day and then we'll get started. It just doesn't make sense to me.
No, it's crazy. I hate that rule, and I wish they would. They're slowly kind of starting to push away from that whole 24-hour, 48-hour thing, but it still happens. I mean, they completely kind of if someone's run away before that, they're just wait a week or wait something.
Oh, gosh.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, of course, they asked if he had ever run away, but his mother was adamant that he would never run away, and it was unlike him. But they didn't send out detectives till 3 a.m.
3 a.m.?
Yeah. It's a weird time and all that, but
That is a weird time to go out and search for somebody.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, the area around Andy's home and the local pool was surrounded by woods, and they were right next to sand dunes that led into the Shawsheen River to make it much worse. So he could have fallen in the river, and he could have been dragged, he could have drowned, he could have been dragged into the woods. There's just so much. And they were super close to the highway, and in 5 minutes you could be gone. That's how close they were to all these awful things. So they were definitely fighting against the odds just straight from the beginning.
Yeah, and I feel like it's easy to underestimate the dangers of being near a highway. You have so many people from all walks of life, from all areas of the country on that highway.
Exactly, yeah. It's sad.
I'm pretty sure we can have a whole episode on crazy things that happen on the highway.
Oh, for sure, definitely.
Weird things, weird people, just all weird.
Yeah, and of course this was before Amber Alerts and all that, so it's not like anyone was outside of the area looking for Andy at that point. But the city did break out in an all-out land and water search. The local kids, parents, and National Guard all worked together to find Andy, but no trace of him was found, and the search was called off after only 6 days.
Yeah, I read about... when I was kind of brushing up on the case, I saw that it was only 6 days.
Yeah.
Do you know how long the searches usually last?
I want to... Because I've heard of cases where they're searching for a month or a month and a half. I don't know if they kind of just assumed with all the odds stacked against him that he was just gone or what. But, the police were really heavily criticized for just how they handled everything in the situation and all that.
And you did say it was from a poor area.
Yes.
That they lived in a poor area. Do you think the police force at the time was just it's...
A little bit, I think so. And I also think they kind of... We'll get into it later, but I think they also pretty much already knew what happened to him. That they were just oh well, kind of.
Gotcha.
If we go back to the beginning, his friend Melanie had vowed growing up that she would do all she could to find Andy. So in 1998, when she was older, she returned to Lawrence to find out what happened to Andy and began working on her documentary, Have You Seen Andy? She has devoted almost all of her adult life to try to figure out what happened to Andy, and I think that's admirable. Like, your friend, your childhood crush goes missing, and it just rocks your world, you know? It turns everything upside down, so it's tough. God, this subject sucks so bad.
Time for a Seth Rogen fact.
Yes.
Did you know that there's a collection of nude paintings created by James Franco of Seth Rogen?
I know they did a music video together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't know about the paintings.
Yeah, so according to Ranker.
Good old Ranker.
This probably surprises no one, but Seth Rogen has a series of NSFW nude portraits, and if you don't know what NSFW is, not suitable for work, right?
Yes,
okay,
correct.
Thought so. That's how I see it. Painted by his BFF, James Franco. Franco and Rogen have a very, we'll call it special, kind of friendship, and they've been known to have a bromance of epic proportions. This series is based on more photorealistic, fairly pornographic book of art entitled Seth by Christopher Schultz. I kind of want to click. My computer's thinking.
It's saying, do I want to load this or not?
Yeah, it's like, where are you?
Oh, you wanted to look it up yourself, or maybe get a print or something for your wall?
It says internal error. It would not let me. Yeah, it would not let me click on the link. But if you're interested in more Seth Rogen facts, you could just Google interesting Seth Rogen facts.
Or you can keep listening and wait for
Or
us
that
to
too.
sprinkle
Yeah.
more.
Well, I'll sprinkle in a few other facts too. But
perfect.
Anyways, yeah.
So in the late 70s, a psychic named Elaine Nowacki claimed to be channeling Andy. Elaine claimed he was murdered and buried by the pool. Now, in the documentary, there's a video of Elaine, and she's kind of talking in, like, this very childlike, like, she's trying to mimic a child, and she's crying, and she's like, why'd you kill me? Like,
oh my
it's
God,
so
that's
creepy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was...
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, I was really uncomfortable with it. Because of Elaine, the police ignored several leads they never followed up on and decided to hire the psychic.
Which was pretty common. I don't know how common it is now, but a lot of police forces on cases or, gosh, I'm losing my train of thought, but they hire psychics.
Yeah.
I don't know how successful it is, but I know it's a practice that is used. Yeah. But they don't vocalize it, of course, because there would definitely be criticism that follows.
Oh, yeah, but I think it's crucial that they ignored several leads and they just went straight for a psychic, and that drives me crazy. Like, I at least follow both routes if you're going to go a psychic route. But
oh, yeah, cover all your bases.
Yeah. But, of course, like I said, they got a lot of backlash for this case. So they ended up hiring Andrew Barnhart, and he asked for some of Andy's mementos. So Faith, Andy's mother, gave Andrew a notebook, a bank book, a baby book, and his favorite baby toy. And unfortunately, Andy's family never got any of these items back because they ended up being lost and destroyed when Barnhart's house got hit by a hurricane or something like that.
Where was Barnhart from? Does it say?
I don't remember. I think it was like Florida or some area around there. But I remember in the documentary, Faith kind of made a comment. She goes, you're a psychic and you can't even determine when a hurricane's going to come. You can't save my child's possessions.
Dang.
Yeah, she did not hold back. So Barnhart told police, and keep this in mind while I keep going through the story, just remember this, that he saw a bread van, a poodle, and sensed Andy was in a shallow grave, and according to him, something was stuck in Andy's mouth and he had suffocated to death. But it was an accidental suffocation, as if Andy had had a seizure while whatever happened to him was taking place. And Barnhart even composed a sketch of the suspect based on what he saw. But they ended up calling off the search with Barnhart due to unwanted media attention that was affecting his ability, and they didn't pursue the lead any further.
So they just got the information from him and the sketch and all the details, and they're like, all right, let's just not use any of this.
Yeah, basically, because Barnhart was like, I can't concentrate with all the media around and all the fans. Yeah. It's interfering with my ability.
But the fans.
So, I mean, that sounds like a great lead, like you kind of know where to start, but most of what Barnhart predicted in the 80s had been posted in a newspaper in the 70s on Andy's case. And police swore up and down that Barnhart didn't see the articles, but...
Oh, they think maybe he saw...
He was reading newspaper articles and he was just channeling that. So I'm almost like 99.9% sure he saw the articles and was just kind of,
using that, to formulate his visions, quote unquote.
Definitely.
How do you feel about psychics? Like, what's your take on psychics?
I mean, I haven't had a personal, like, one-on-one experience with a psychic, so I can't really say, like, oh, they were fishing for information or something,
Yeah, I think they're fun. Something to take extremely lightly. And if you're a psychic listening to this, please reach out. Let us know.
Prove us wrong.
Yes. Tell us how we should take the words of psychics. Like, are they literal? Are they just, like, symbolic? How do you even draw these, I guess, conclusions or pick up whatever it is on that person?
So Andy's case went cold for 17 years, and 3 decades later the case was reopened due to an article in the Eagle Tribune which rekindled the interest in the case. When the case was reopened, Melina dug through Andy's case files, where she found a letter written in 1889 from a prison inmate who confessed to killing a Lawrence boy. The author of the letter was named Charles E. Pierce. Okay, this is where we're going to get heavy, guys. So if you want to skip forward like a minute and a half, just brace yourself. So this garbage person had been committing crimes against children as far back as the 1950s. He was into necrophilia, and in 1979 he had confessed to killing Michelle Wilson, a 13-year-old girl less than 10 miles away from where Andy had disappeared. Pierce approached Michelle as she was riding her bicycle home from a friend's house. He dragged her into his van where he strangled her. He then had sex with her dead body and took her to some woods where he bit her, beat her, and kicked her in the head. He then placed a 98-pound rock on her head and covered her with leaves. And this is according to Robert Weiner, the Essex County First Assistant District Attorney who prosecuted the case in 1980. It's a lot of big words.
Weiner is a pretty big word.
In 1981, he confessed to killing 15 to 20 other children. He was a carnival worker who traveled extensively and was linked to many children crimes. He spent 20 years in prison and died of prostate cancer on February 18, 1999 at 1:45 a.m. But luckily, just before he died, with pressure from Melanie and reporters from the Boston Globe, Police Captain Michael Mulchin and State Investigator Sergeant Jack Gavin went to go interview Pierce.
Wait, I'm going to give you a little break from all of these long names. He worked for a carnival, is that right?
Yeah, so he was a carnival worker.
That gives me chills. Like, because you're traveling, it's hard for people to pinpoint who you are even, where you are, and you're surrounded by children. Yeah. I mean, that's like a pedophile's dream.
Unfortunately, yeah, like no one could trace him back because, I mean, if you're killing all these kids in different ways, to be able to get away with 15 to 20 children murders is ridiculous.
Were they in different places? You know?
He was traveling all over the state.
Yeah, so it's really hard if you have a, murder in one state or like in one city and then another. From what I believe and hear, like the police departments don't always work with one another. Like you're kind of in your own bubble trying to solve a case that is happening somewhere else too that you may not be aware about.
Yeah. And they still do that today, and I feel like they need to kind of work out like a system where they can like type in these key things and kind of like link to other ones. I think that would be really crucial to help solve a lot of murders.
Oh, for sure.
And cases and all that.
Yeah, I think it's getting better now. But
back then it was just
I could see impossible. I could see how that's difficult back in those days.
Luckily, just before he died, with pressures from Melanie and a reporter from the Boston Globe, Police Captain Michelle Mulchin and State Investigator Sergeant Jack Garvin went to go interview Pierce. There, he confessed to killing Janice Pocket, a 7-year-old girl from Toland, Connecticut, and a 10 or 11-year-old Lawrence boy whom he wouldn't name. He stated he killed the Lawrence boy in his van, had sex with the boy's body, and then had sex with Janice's dead body, which he was also carrying in the vehicle.
So he had these bodies in his vehicle the whole time?
Yep. Ugh. I can't even imagine, like, the smell.
Yeah.
And according to him, he buried the children in graves about 30 feet apart, 2 feet deep, using a spade he kept in his van. And the burial site was in a field in Lawrence, which he had marked with a piece of coal.
Why? Like, why would he mark it? I guess it's part of, like, if you're a psychopath.
I guess, to visit or something. I don't know. And then also, a spade? You dug a grave with a spade? Spades are tiny. They're those little hand
Little hand shovels.
Yeah, that would have taken forever.
Well, it's only also 2 feet deep.
That's true, but you're building you're digging 2-foot deep holes.
So this wasn't a smart man.
No, he was an idiot. I mean, smart enough to know that he could kill as a carnival worker, but not smart enough to think through what he's... I don't know.
Did they ever find any cases of, like, mental illness with him? Not to say that was a reason, because there are tons of people with mental illnesses that don't do this kind of shit.
Yeah.
But he just seems
not all
way off the rocker. Like, he seems absolutely insane.
Yeah, I didn't see anything with mental illness for him. But, I mean, I wouldn't doubt that there was definitely something going on with him for sure.
Yeah, how much do we actually know about the killer? Or this killer, rapist, awful piece of shit human?
Well, I didn't want to dig into him just because I wanted to kind of focus on Andy's thing. Because if I focused on him, like, we would have a whole nother episode and all that.
Yeah.
But this is kind of just like a quick snippet of him. I mean, he was just a piece of shit asshole. And
yeah, no, totally not a big deal. Like, the focus should be on Andy and his disappearance. Tragic disappearance.
So Pierce became upset when detectives showed him Andy's photo and refused to continue the police interview. The next day, Pierce recanted his story and refused to talk further, which he was notorious for doing. So he might have just completely lied about this. And police searched the area, but after searches, they came up empty-handed, and their bodies still haven't been found, if they were even buried in the area. But I would like to mention that Janice Pocket vanished in 1973, and Andy had disappeared in 1976. So I feel like he just completely lied.
Wait, so you think he lied about
Andy?
Andy.
I believe he lied completely about Andy, because if Janice Pocket disappeared in 1973, you're not going to have a body of a dead little girl in your van for 3 years. Because Andy disappeared in 1976.
So you think that... Well, he could have buried her right after.
He's saying that he had sex with Janice's body and then with Andy.
Oh, I see what you mean. So,
Yeah, you're not gonna... No, I feel like he was completely lying about it. And then for him to quickly recant his story...
Like, he didn't have the years right. Like, he was unaware of the years, because that'd be almost... possible, but truly, truly disturbing.
Yes,
if that is true.
Yeah. And Pierce would often go to Higgins Pool to observe the children from time to time.
Ugh.
I know. And unfortunately, according to police, there was 5 known pedophiles at the pool the day that Andy went missing.
What?
Yeah. Like, there was no... I know, it's ridiculous.
They should not be allowed to go to pools or public spaces.
I know.
There needs to be someone watching, like, around the pool, the parameters, for any
cars.
For any cars just, like, awkwardly parked and staring with binoculars. Out of here. Gone.
Yeah. No, and there was no registry at the time, so people couldn't look it up, and like we can today. So. Yeah. And Pierce even drove a dark-colored van that resembled a vehicle that several of Melanie's informants remembered by the public pool around the time of Andy's disappearance. Pierce also wasn't in prison when Andy disappeared and mentioned he was acquainted with another pedophile named Wayne W. Chapman, and he was seen from time to time in Lawrence. Now, Wayne is another pedophile who was already a suspect in Andy's case, and he was arrested 2 weeks after Andy's abduction on other charges.
So, do you want to learn a fun fact about seahorses?
I do want to know about seahorses.
So, seahorses mate for life. They're super monogamous. So the monogamous seahorse employs a complicated mating ritual of dancing with their prospective partner for as long as 8 hours.
Dang.
That's a long time.
They have some stamina.
I know. I can't even dance for like 30 minutes. Like, I would be the most single seahorse out there.
I wonder if they just kind of like hold on to some seaweed and just let the currents make it look like they're dancing.
That's a good question. I wonder if there's a YouTube video on mating seahorses. Dancing. Their mating dance.
Pornhub
like,
for seahorses?
It's like animal porn. That's weird.
So bad.
I know. Oh, gosh. It was supposed to be a fun fact, and then it took a turn. Never mind.
Now we're back on the same topic.
Now we're back.
Damn it.
Yeah, we're back to the weirdness.
Okay. In 1976, Chapman was a 28-year-old janitor working at a hospital in New York, He was arrested for a minor traffic violation September of that year. The officer who pulled over Chapman noticed that there was dozens of photos of naked children in various poses spread all over his car's dashboard. Which is like, to have the audacity and like the confidence to have these photos on your car's dash while you're just driving around.
While you're driving around? Like, imagine just driving around and like the person next to you they have these images.
Yeah, like I'd be calling the cops.
Oh, for sure.
As soon as I saw it. Like, no. So because of the photos, they were able to do a thorough search of his van. And in the van, they uncovered tons of child pornography, a photo of a boy that looked like Andy, rope, tape, handcuff, 8mm home movies, a fake police badge, a starter pistol, and a bloody children's sock.
People who pose as police officers there are a lot of things that piss me off in this world, and that's one of them.
Yeah, especially to go after children.
Yeah.
And we always teach kids, like, hey, like, you know, if you need help, you go to a police officer or someone like that.
And for a pedophile to pose as a police officer is just the worst.
Yeah. For him to have, like, a starter pistol, too. Like, I can just imagine how terrified a kid would be, you know? Like, they think they did something wrong. Ugh, I hate it. So, on the home movies were tons of videos of children. He would stalk parks and go around schools, and he even recorded his voice and voicing over fantasies while he looked at the children around him.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and you can hear some of these in the documentary. They actually had to edit out a lot of it because it was too much for HBO.
Dang, and HBO, everything goes.
Yeah, definitely. So, it's the fact that these fantasies were so bad that they couldn't even include them in the HBO documentary is insane to me.
And then imagine being the person, like, on the case that has to go through all of these files.
Yeah.
Like, one of our a friend of a friend, he lives in Arizona, and that's his job. Like, his job is to hunt these people down, and whenever they have they are on a case and they find child pornography, like, they have to watch it.
Oh, no.
Especially if they're looking for somebody specific.
Yeah.
Like a child that's missing, or just to identify victims.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't imagine having to do that.
Oh my God. Can you imagine, like, the PTSD from a job like that? Like,
sure.
Oh
and if you have kids especially, like, I don't know.
I wouldn't trust anybody.
Exactly. No. Sorry, kid, you're being homeschooled for
the rest of your
life.
No college, no nothing. You're staying here. They ended up bringing Andy's mother, Faith, to the station to see if she could identify the single sock. And Faith almost fainted when she recognized them as her daughter's socks. Andy had been wearing them that day at the pool, and she remembers he was because all the siblings were, like, making fun of him because they were, like, knee-high socks with, like, a red and blue, like, stripe over them. Like, you can tell they're, you know, whose they belong to. And the socks were sent to a crime lab, but they went missing before they could be tested.
How did all these things go missing?
Right? Yeah, it was just either a slip of the hand, maybe a cover-up. I
just, like, when I hear of things like this, and not to bash, like, people on cases, I'm pretty sure the job is very difficult, but when I hear of evidence being lost or misplaced, I just think of, like, a slapstick comedy where it's, like, the funny music playing in the background, and they're like, whoops.
Oh, well,
like,
guess we don't need this.
Drop this evidence. Oh, darn. You know, like, it's just very, it's not funny. But in my head it is, because I'm like, what? How does that make sense?
How do you screw up your job that much that you lose such a key point of evidence, you know?
I mean, you have multiple jobs, so the one job is keep that item.
It's just, it drives me crazy. And a few days before Andy disappeared, a strange man had taken several photos of Andy, and Andy had actually brought one of these photos back to his mom and was like, hey, Mom, like, look. And Faith was like, why are you letting people take pictures of you? Don't ever let anybody take photos of you, you know? It's not...
So he had interaction with him prior?
Yes, that's what they're guessing. And because Chapman had a bunch of photos and cameras and all that in his van, they're almost completely sure that he ran into Chapman.
Mm-hmm.
So, thankfully, the photo in Chapman's car that looked like Andy did end up being Andy. And they did end up kind of taking the photo that Andy had given his mother. But after 28 years, the only evidence they were able to collect from the Polaroid was a single smudged thumbprint. And you can't pull anything from a smudged thumbprint. So, in August of 1975, the summer before Andy was abducted, 2 boys were lured away and raped in the nearby woods. Local children weren't warned of the assault of the 2 Lawrence boys. It wasn't until Chapman's picture was printed in the paper of his arrest that the two Lawrence boys were able to identify him, and he was convicted in September 1977, and that's when he became a suspect in Andy's case. Which, I mean, you're not going to warn parents of the children and all this stuff that this happened. You're just going to be like, oh, whatever, hide it under the rug.
Yeah, they should be getting updates as these things are happening, and
put posters.
Because he was still out on the loose. He's just out interacting among other people. Like, that is crazy.
Yeah. At this point, Chapman was already a suspect in a ton of missing children cases. To make matters worse, he ran a 4-H club where he sodomized several children in Providence, Rhode Island. Do you know what a 4-H club is, by the way? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. So
sorry.
So for those who don't know, it's kind of like a non-profit organization for children and adolescents, and you do projects in areas like health, science, agriculture, civic engagement. It's a lot of positive reinforcement. You, like, raise animals and all this stuff.
Yeah, 4-H was big where I grew up. Like, we had days where we wouldn't go to school because 4-H was happening.
Yeah.
Like, the competitions, and my sister-in-law is involved in it. Like, she grows pigs. She raises pigs. And then she sells them, which I think is, I don't know, Gabriel and I were talking about this the other day. I was like, it's kind of an interesting hobby to have. Like, let me raise this animal and then sell it.
I'd be
and
so
then
attached.
It's gonna go, exactly, because I mean, you know where they go. Like, they're going to slaughterhouses.
Yeah. I mean, hey, kudos to you if you can do that. I'm too much of, like, an animal person to be like, okay, bye-bye.
Yeah, I know. Be like, listen, I raised this goat for a year. This is my goat. Yeah, my parents would be so pissed. Like, my dad would not let me do 4-H because I wanted to, but he's like, no, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. He didn't want to do 4-H. Like,
I didn't know about 4-H till, like, after I was in high school, and I'm like, man, if I would have known about it, I would have been totally into this.
Yeah, I think they, like, raise bunnies and stuff, too. I would do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyways, this creep was over here running this club or involved in the organization that...
Yeah. So, and a lot of 4-H is kind of like learning from adults and all that. So to have someone who's your mentor do that to you,
Yeah, that's a perfect position to groom children.
Yeah, like, you have the authority, and it's disgusting. And, like, it makes my stomach hurt, you know, just... I hate it. So Chapman was detained and interrogated by police from several states, and he had tons of charges against him, including sexual battery upon a minor, assault, and murder. And he was also charged for the murder of David Lewison, a 6-year-old boy who had been missing from Broxton, Massachusetts since 1974. Police searched the Broxton area for David's remains based on Chapman's confession, but unfortunately nothing was ever recovered. And because of lack of evidence, he was never convicted for the murder. And, okay, so remember in the beginning how I told you to remember these, like, about the sidekick and the van and all that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to bring that back right now. So Chapman used to lure children by approaching them in a panic, and he would tell the children he lost his white poodle and needed help finding it. Chapman promised the kids money in return for helping him find his dog. He would then separate the kids, and the kid that followed him would become his victim. He was never charged for Andy's abduction or officially questioned, but he was sentenced indefinitely to the Massachusetts Center for the Sexually Dangerous for the assault of the two Lawrence boys. The center is essentially a sex offender mental hospital. He was labeled a sexually fixated, regressed pedophile. And according to the typology of sexual predators, we're going to need a fact after this. A fixated subtype is considered at a higher risk for continuing to commit additional sex offenses. The fixated offender is characterized as having a persistent, continual, and compulsive attraction to children. They often target male victims, and their crimes often aren't reported because they do target male victims. And a regressed subtype may turn to sexual contact with children as a means of coping or as a substitute during the time of considerable stress in their lives. It usually emerges in adulthood and tends to be kind of like brought on by external stressors. Their behavior is more impulsive, and in addition, their victims are often girls. and they are more likely to be children who are either within the family, well known to them, or who are easily accessible during these times of impulse. And I read somewhere that these subtypes that Chapman was have up to 400 to 500 victims, but I couldn't find any further proof to back that up.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
And that's like the average for each person that's categorized under this.
The regressed fixated subtype, yes.
Oh.
Which is a mix of both subtypes, so they're just dangerous, completely dangerous. So
and they're the, I cannot think. I'm like still like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I guess the prediction of their reoffense is pretty high, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So these people that are in prison because they're under this category, like, are they often in prison for life?
So a lot of people that end up with this subtype actually are kind of sent to mental hospitals. Mm-hmm. And so they don't technically go to jail, but they're supposed to be at these hospitals indefinitely. And that didn't happen with Chapman.
I can't see, but I'm shaking my head. My head.
Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of just stuff that I'm like, what the hell were you people thinking? So, let's hear a fact.
Yes, so my next fact is that, see, earlier when I said that when you're behind the mic, you kind of just lose all, like, knowledge on how to work your mouth and pronounce words. I was going to say Rogen, but Rogen had to practice this. Rogen and Evan Goldberg have teamed up on numerous films. But the first one they ever wrote together was Superbad. They started writing the script for Superbad when they were just 13 years old.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I really like that movie,
What were you doing at 13? Not writing scripts.
No.
I know I wasn't. God, I don't even know what, but...
Listening to My Chemical Romance and crying a lot.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Drawing pictures. Sad emo pictures.
Sleeping all the time.
Sleeping, yeah. Not writing Superbad. Superbad was pretty mature for, well, I want to say it was a mature movie, but for a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
But yeah, fun fact.
That's funny. So hospital records show that Chapman wasn't working the day of Andy's abduction, and multiple eyewitness accounts placed someone who looked like Chapman with Andy that day. A lifeguard even identified Chapman in a photo lineup and told police that he even came the next day to ask why people were searching the area.
And usually, don't, like, people who commit crimes, especially, like, murders, they're somehow, like, they want to be involved. Yeah. Because I guess they think that it looks like they're not the ones. Like, it kind of deflects the attention, but also they're psychopaths.
And they're right in the center of it, and they want to see the chaos that they're creating.
Yeah, and they think that, oh, I'm untouchable. Like, you have this...
I'm right here, haha, kind of thing.
Yeah, like, they get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
Bastards.
So 2 girls told their mother they saw a man that looked like Chapman following Andy to the back of the pool by the boys' locker room towards the stadium. Now remember how someone had told Faith that Andy was by the stadium?
Mm-hmm.
So all this stuff is just lining up. Another eyewitness said a man asked him to help him look for a dog. When he told the man no, Andy volunteered to go in his place and look.
Because like you said at the beginning, he was just that kind-hearted person that...
Always
wanted
willing
help.
To help. Almost all eyewitnesses were children, and because of this, the leads were never followed up on. I know.
I mean, what do you expect? You're at a pool and there's nothing but kids.
Exactly. It's summer. Parents are doing whatever. Like, back in this time, you didn't expect your kids to go missing and disappear and get murdered and all this stuff.
That's so crazy. Just thinking about when I was a kid, we would do that. We would get on our bikes and we would go to the pool. And our parents were always working.
Mm-hmm. Like, just be home before it gets dark.
Yeah, exactly. We just get on our bikes and just ride around everywhere. And that was the place to go, was the pool.
Yeah. In 1982, 6 years after Andy went missing, a newspaper article was printed about a little boy who was with Andy that day. And no one knew about this little boy that was with Andy till this newspaper article was printed. Now, this little boy was Ray Clark, and at the time he was 4 years old. He stated Andy and him agreed to help find Chapman's dog. Chapman lured Ray and Andy towards the back of the pool area to the woods. They went down a hill, and after a brief search, they started to walk back, and they lost sight of Chapman. That's when Andy saw 2 men hiding by bushes, and he became frightened. He began to yell at Ray to run. Andy was running behind him and repeatedly pushed Ray forward so he could run farther ahead. When Ray was up the hill, he stopped to turn around and look for Andy, but Andy had already been grabbed by 2 men and he was being pinned down on a large rock. Ray says that he watched as Andy screamed and cried, so he ran back to the pool to get help, but no one was around. And at this time, it kind of heard from like different articles and stuff like that the pool had closed. So it's kind of crazy in my mind that a pool that was so filled with so much people that a lifeguard couldn't recognize anybody was just gone. You know, like everyone just dispersed right after it closed. So I don't know. I'm a little back and forth on this account, but just with how much detail he has and how much it fits in the story, I mean, it's completely plausible that all the kids just scattered.
Yeah, but two men?
We're going to get into that
Sorry.
too. So just keep in mind, it's Chapman and then there's 2 other men. Ray was so traumatized by the ordeal that it took him 6 years to tell police what he saw that day. He was later hypnotized and described the man with the dog as Chapman to a T. However, because Ray was only 4 at the time, there was no police reports in Andy's file about Ray's testimony. Because he was a little itty-bitty kid, and I guess that's not important to a case about a child disappearance.
Man, accounts from kids are really tough, though.
Yeah.
Because their imagination is pretty crazy, pretty out there, and it's like whenever kids do have information, they just take it at the wrong times.
Yeah.
So, like, in this case, they were like, we're dismissing it because it's a bunch of little kids. But,
if they put it together, it would have created a timeline, you know?
Yeah, if they took the time and actually took it seriously. But then you read about 20 years later or 10 years later, during the Satanic Panic.
Oh, like, that was insane.
Like, these kids had stories that were insane that, you know, you could have read from a book, and they believed them. So it's like, why listen to that? But then you can't listen to something that's actually happening.
Well, that was a little different because they were kind of like putting the ideas in those kids' heads. Like, did he touch you? And the kids are like, oh yeah, or oh, like a floorboard opened and they were torturing us. And
yeah, and everyone's floating around in the sky.
Yeah.
Like,
and they believed it because it was just that time period.
Yeah, and it fit their narrative.
Yeah, and they butchered that. Oh my God, the Satanic Panic, they butchered everything about that. Like,
much like this.
Yeah, definitely. But we'll have to do an episode on it. For sure.
I was just thinking about other cases where kids were involved in.
Yeah. This one's a little different, though, because these kids are telling you. Exactly, they're not getting probed about it. They're like, hey, listen.
And it's aligning.
All of it's aligning. In 1999, Melanie got a letter from 2 men about a shallow grave they had discovered in Lawrence area near the pool when Andy went missing when they were children. They approximated the grave was about 4 feet by 6 feet. So they brought cadaver dogs over to the area. Over a 2-month span, all 3 dogs locked into one area. So they were going to use ground-penetrating equipment that they used to find bodies, but it wasn't available the day of the dig. Like, something else happened and they had to use the equipment, so the search looking for Andy's body couldn't use it. So they manually dug up the disturbed ground, but they didn't find anything. And they show a bit of this in the documentary, and they think they find, like, a coffin, and they're all excited about it. But it ends up being just, like, a weird log placed in the dirt. Yeah. I was, like, super excited thinking that they were going to find his body or something, but no. And in 1991, Chapman hired 2... Okay, so remember how I said that he got released from the mental hospital, Chapman? Okay, so we're going to go back to that.
Wait, I thought earlier you said that he wasn't in a mental... Like, he should have been locked away there forever, but wasn't.
So he did go, but this is why he didn't stay in there.
Okay.
So in 1991, Chapman hired 2 psychiatrists to rule in his favor that he was no longer sexually dangerous, and because of this, he was relocated to a local prison. He became eligible for parole in May of 2018.
What? Why? This, like, men like this, people like this, don't deserve parole. They don't deserve shit.
No, they don't. And a court ruling stated that he was to be released due to his age and physical shape because it would make it more difficult for him to commit crimes. Not impossible, but difficult. Which is such fucking bullshit.
Exactly.
Like, he is now a grandpa at this point. Like,
I'm sorry, just because you're old doesn't mean you should get, you know, the easy way out. Yeah, no. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you're 80, if you can barely move. If you're a pedophile,
you're staying there.
You're done.
Yeah. So they were like, oh, he's too old, he's too fat, you know. But it's like, kids are going to be drawn to this grandfather figure. Exactly. He is more dangerous like this. So it drives me crazy. So his release was appealed because in June, days before his release, he had new charges put against him for exposing himself to staff and nurses, and he began masturbating in front of them.
Gross.
Yeah. Unfortunately, May 2019, the Supreme Judicial Court had ordered his release from jail, even though, according to court records, a court found Chapman had at least 50 victims, and Chapman said he assaulted up to 100 boys.
What the fuck?
I know. Like, it makes me so upset. Chapman still faced criminal charges for exposing himself to staff and committing lewd acts, and he has to deal with those charges before any potential release. And he's still held on a $25,000 bail in that case, and he was due for a pretrial conference on those charges May 23rd, according to a Middlesex DA office, but it was pushed back to July of 18th of this year. And I actually forgot to look up, like, I wrote this story like months ago and I like just pushed it to the side and forgot about it because I'm like, I need a break from this. So let me pause real quick and see if I can find anything to update.
Okay, so we have found an update.
Oh my god.
We are back, and according to the Boston Globe, this was on August 9th, 2019, so not that long ago at all. The article
you said
states
August 19th?
August 9th, 2019.
10 days ago.
10 days ago. I don't even know what today is, but
19th.
yeah.
It's the 19th.
Yeah,
today.
so 10 days ago, the article states, convicted child rapist Wayne Chapman was found not guilty of fondling himself in front of prison staff, and his acquittal means that he will be released to the public, according to Middlesex District Attorney's Office.
That is such bullshit.
I had to like pause. I'm like realizing that again, like released to the public.
Oh my god, that makes me so upset. Like, did they say when he's gonna be released? Nothing about that.
Let's see.
And how are you found not guilty if you literally whipped out your dick and were masturbating? Oh my god.
Let's see. Eric Tinanen, the attorney representing Chapman, said he does not think his client is a danger to the public. Fuck you, Eric. He's been incarcerated.
Name him. Call him out.
He's been incarcerated for over 40 years, and that's long enough, he said. No, it's not long enough. So this isn't, oh gosh.
This case fucking sucks.
How does this even happen?
Well, you want me to get into that question?
Yeah, let's continue.
So because police believe that he was never going to be released from the mental hospital and he was going to be locked up for the rest of his life, which he's getting out, he was never officially questioned for the disappearance or prosecuted or followed up on any of the leads. So he's got no trace of Andy on his record or anything like that. Because of that, now this piece of shit is getting let out. Like, drives me crazy. And it seems like all fingers point to Chapman and Andy's abduction, but I do have to add a but because there's going to be people who don't think it was Chapman. So I'm going to kind of give you guys the other side, which I hate to do because I 100% believe it was Chapman. At the time of Andy's abduction, they were cracking down on child pornography rings in Massachusetts, and the owner of the corner store, the owner of the corner store where Melanie and Andy used to buy candy from, was arrested for possession of child pornography. So, like, it was everywhere at that point in time. And a few months after Andy's disappearance, a child pornography ring was broken up in Revere, Massachusetts, which is a city about 20 miles from Lawrence, so very close. And North America Man-Boy Love was even formed in Kenmore Station, which is a 40-minute drive from Lawrence. And these pieces of shit believe in legalizing the right to have sex with children, and they are one of the biggest known groups of pedophiles. And their fucking website is still up. So
what are they called, or what do they call themselves?
North America Man-Boy Love.
Man-Boy Love?
Yes.
These groups are so dangerous in many, many ways. Yeah. What really grinds my gears is like people have linked them to like the LGBT community,
and they're
nothing, not even close. Like they are not part of that group whatsoever.
They are pedophiles, and that's what they are, and
they're criminals.
Yeah, they're criminals. So actually, when I was researching this, I stumbled onto their fucking website, and it is disgusting. Like, there's a join now button, and you have to pay a fee, and Matt was like, get the fuck off that site, like the FBI.
The FBI's flagged your computer indefinitely.
Yeah. So I put into Google, research for Andy Puglisi and like trying to like cover my tracks a little bit there, because I'm like, I felt so sick looking on this fucking website. Like, and it's creepy. It's like not properly formatted or anything like that, and it's just like, it looks like an old website with just text everywhere and pictures and like the flashing buttons, and it's it's revolting. It is so gross.
How is it still up, I wonder?
Exactly.
Like, how...
freedom of speech. Fucking freedom of speech.
Which is our right, but there is... Yeah, that's where freedom of speech, but it dives into crime, like criminal activity.
Yeah, like, you should have consequences for having something like this. And Andy wasn't the only child to disappear from Lawrence in the 70s. He is one of many, and all of those cases are cold. A lot of sex rings in the area were notorious for taking photos and videos of children, and some even took the children with them.
Like, they were in the pictures with the children, or...
Oh, no. They used these to take the children. So they would show people, like, the videos and pictures of the children, and they'd be like, oh, I want this one. So then they would go and take the kid again after.
Oh, my God.
Which goes back to, I think Chapman was kind of... I know I was supposed to say Chapman's not involved, but this goes back to Chapman having the fucking photos in his car and all the film and stuff like that he was working with a sex ring. I'm almost like 99.9% sure. And a lot of these key points are reflected in Andy's case, and it's highly unlikely that if it was Chapman who took Andy that he was working alone. So on August 2006, 30 years after Andy's abduction, a church service was held for him, and he still hasn't been found. Police insist that the case is still open, but they cannot investigate further due to lack of resources, which is bullshit, because they had been offered dozens of equipment free of charge, but they have turned down every single fucking offer. So
why?
Why? I don't know. And especially with the fact that Chapman is getting out, pursue it. Put him back in jail. You thought that all these leads didn't matter at the time because he was going to be locked up for his, like, pedophilia, but he wasn't, because you didn't pursue. He's getting out now, you know? So, with that being said, if you have any information regarding the disappearance of Andy, you can contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST, the Massachusetts State Police at 1-978-745-6610, and the Lawrence Police Department at 978-794-5909. But yeah, that is the awful case of Andy.
Wow. So that just makes me think that I'm kind of looking up articles around Chapman's
crimes,
but his trial and things like that. So the prosecutor brought up a good point about him being released. Like, typically with sex offenders, you know, they're supposed to be like, I cannot talk. I'm just like, I know. The world is a scary place.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be able to track them, right? They're supposed to have an address that you can upload.
That reminds me. So when Melanie was doing the research for the documentary, she got in contact with Chapman, and she met up with Chapman. And he was asking her places that don't have a sex registry, like a sex offender registry, and places where he won't have to be put down and on notice that he was a sex offender. And that was one of the first questions he fucking asked her.
He was trying to get her help to find the next place he can go.
Exactly.
And be unidentified and just live his sick pedophile life.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, if he's released, and most of the time, if you spent years and years in jail, like, it's really hard to go back. You don't just go and buy a home.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so more than likely, I think, like, I don't know, more than likely, you know, he's going to be homeless and things like that. So that makes it even worse. Like, he's just out there, and
it's so dangerous.
You don't know. Dangerous. Yeah, like, people aren't going to know where he is or who he is, even, unless they're familiar with the case.
A lot of people don't know about this case, which just drives me crazy. Like, he can be hiding in the woods again and just snatch a kid, and you don't know, you know? Like,
yeah, it looks like it'd be kind of hard for him to chase a kid, but he can lure them in for sure.
Playing the whole grandpa role of, hey, I can't reach this. Can you help me? Like, you know, it's just...
I believe it'll be a matter of time before he's back.
Oh, yeah.
Because people like this reoffend. You made a good point about people not knowing about this.
My brain is just mush.
Cold cases get solved, though, and that's one thing... I'm not a fan of cold cases, because I'm somebody that wants to know. Like, I want to know everything. I need to know, like, where this person is and how, you know, if they were found and where. But there are so many, and I always have hope that one day cases like these will be solved.
Yeah.
Especially when it involves children.
And they had mentioned, too, that they did do some digging around the pool area, but the dogs never picked up on it. So I don't, like, they've had situations where they think they know where he is, and they just can't follow up or can't go through, or the dogs aren't picking it up. So
yeah, I
don't know. It's rough. There's just so much. I wish I had the funds to be like, hey, here's all this equipment. Like, go fucking do it right now. You know,
go find out, please.
Yeah, because his family needs, that closure and all that. But
yeah, despite how long ago it was, it's still important, still relevant. Whenever you have a criminal that they're proof that he's a pedophile, like, that's when it's like, okay, proven, like, innocent until proven guilty, my ass. Like, there's so much proof that he's guilty.
Yeah, and he also already had the record with the 2 Lawrence boys that he had raped 2 years before Andy disappeared. Like, that was already pinned on him. I did forget to mention that those boys did recall hearing camera clicks. So that just goes back to the whole sex ring and all that. And I don't know, this is a topic that I get really upset about, because, I mean...
And what's even worse is whenever, like you had mentioned earlier about little boys, that they go unrecorded and unrecognized because it's harder to speak out for, if you're a male, it's harder to speak out. Yeah, or
because everyone's kind of like, yeah, whatever, like, boys don't get raped, which is fucking bullshit.
Exactly.
Like,
So we definitely need to change. I feel like our society needs to change the narrative of, like, boys will be boys, and boys need to be tough, and boys need to be strong. Like, no, little boys are victims too.
Yeah.
And we need to encourage them, to speak out on things like this if, they are victims.
And not brush it under the rug and just pretend it doesn't happen, because it happens. Unfortunately, it happens all the time. So, And that also goes with, like, the whole boys don't cry, and boys need to hide their emotion, and boys need to man up. Like, fuck that. Like,
oh, yeah. No.
Cry. Please, show me. Like,
yeah.
I don't want you to grow up to be, like, this robot who can't communicate with his spouse or his partner, and you don't want that. So.
No, exactly. So, fun fact about Superbad to end on. So, when you compare the length of Superbad to the number of times the F word is said, 186 times.
Like this episode.
It averages out to the swear word being used 1.6 times per minute.
Really?
Yeah.
Dang.
That's a lot. A lot of fucks.
I didn't even click it. Like, I watched that movie not that long ago, and I didn't realize there was that many in there.
It's funny because people will cuss around me and be like, oh, I'm sorry, or apologize. I'm like, I didn't even realize you said anything. It's so ingrained in my language, I guess. Yeah. Especially when I worked in a college, like, I would, students don't care.
It's funny because when I first met you, I was like, I don't know if I can cuss around her. So I kind of, like, sprinkled a couple in there.
Like, it doesn't even register in my mind.
Yeah. Well, good. We're on the same page with that. Because I've met people that are so prudish about that. And I'm like, dude, it's 2019. Cuss all the time. Like, everyone cusses everywhere.
Yeah, probably my favorite time in my life was when I was in grad school, and my professor, who I'm going to meet with tomorrow, she was leaving out of town. She's like, hey, can you cover my class? All you have to do is play a documentary and have a conversation about it. I'm like, all right, cool. It was my language and culture class, and we watched the documentary Fuck. Yeah, I'm like, oh my god, this is where I need to be. Yeah, like, I need to just study language and talk about fuck all the time.
That's cool. That's so neat.
Yeah, it's a really good documentary. I think it's only on YouTube now. I'm not too sure, but there's, like, comedians in there. There's professors. Like, yeah, they just study, like, the word and how it plays in culture and how it's so interchangeable and you can use it for everything. Like, yeah, it's just such a great documentary.
That's awesome. I'm gonna have to look it up for sure.
It's a good watch.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm sorry to have done such a fucking bummer episode.
One of many. So it's all right. I'll find a bummer to drop on people and we could be even.
And I'll cry on the podcast for the first time.
Hey, you couldn't hear. I don't think anybody can even notice.
Oh, I got close though. I was like, oh, fuck.
It's heavy. It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
But thank y'all for joining in and listening.
I hope you keep listening after this. Yeah, but thank you guys so much for tuning in for episode 4. You can find us on all our socials, which is
on Instagram, Booze Podcast, BOOZ Podcast.
Our website, boozepodcast.com. Everything's spelled the same way.
Same for the Twitter.
Yes.
The Twitter and
our Facebook page, actually. If you just put in at Booze Podcast, our page should pop up. I have a tag now for that.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
So official.
I know.
It's all coming together.
Well, thank you guys so much, and we'll
catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.